2009 through present day Ford F-150 with the EcoBoost 3.5 liter engine spark plug replacement. I'm Brian Eslick from How to Automotive. I'm going to walk you step by step through the process of changing out the spark plugs. Before we get started, I wanted to share with you the part numbers for the spark plugs. I will also be replacing one of the ignition coils. I will link the coil up in the description of the video. That way, if you need to pick up any of those, you can find those there. Backstory on this vehicle is approaching 100,000 miles, just shy of it, and it has a misfire on cylinder number 1. So the customer asked for the spark plugs to be replaced and also one coil. He's going on a long trip and he doesn't want any problems. The first thing you're going to want to do is remove the oil cap so we can get the engine cover off. So you're going to remove the cap and then you're going to lift upwards and then you're going to pull the cover forward towards you. Now you can set the cover aside, and I also recommend that you put the cap back on. A helpful tool to have is this truck ladder here that you put over the tire to help you stand up on it and get in here on the engine bay. It's not a must-have tool, but it makes life easier. I will link it up in the description of the video. So now if your engine bay was extremely dirty like this one was, you may want to take some compressed air and blow around all the ignition coils like this. And what that'll do is prevent any dirt from falling down into the cylinders when we take it all apart. So I'm going to start on the passenger side first, and the first thing we're going to do is unplug the ignition coils. So you need to take this little red tab here and slide it back. Sometimes you can do it with your fingers, and sometimes it's a little tougher and it requires a little screwdriver. And you pry the little tab back, and now you can push the little tab here downwards and then pull the ignition coil plug off. So sometimes it helps to push the connector all the way in towards the coil and then push the little tab down and then pull it off. Once you get the coil unplugged, you can remove the 8mm bolt here. This little vacuum line was kind of covering it. You can just push it off to the side and pull the coil out. So now you can do the same thing for the 2 remaining coils on this side. On the driver's side, you're going to need to remove this foam pad, and there's a few other challenges, and I'll walk you through that in just a second as we get through the first ones. So you're going to remove the 8mm fasteners on these coils, and the coils can kind of get stuck, kind of create like a vacuum down on there, and it may require a little prying to get them to come out. So you're going to do that for all 3 on this side. The one in the very back here, it's a little bit challenging to get to because you have to work around the heater hoses. As long as the car is not hot, you can flex those heater hoses out of the way, and then you can get back there and remove those fasteners. Also, if you have tools like this ratchet here, a cordless ratchet, it makes life easy. I will link up all these tools that I'm using in the video in the description of the video. Having the engine cool down a little bit is helpful, especially when you have to work around these heater hoses here. They can be very hot when you pull them out. As you can see, I just flexed them out of the way to pull the coils out. Now you're going to need a 5/8 standard spark plug socket and about a 6-inch extension. I like to use these flex head style ratchets when doing spark plugs. So we're going to go ahead and remove all 3 of the spark plugs on this side. I also do not recommend using power tools to remove the spark plugs. That's asking for trouble. You can strip them out really easy. So as you can see, the hardest one is going to be the rear one back here. And I just flexed the hoses out of my way and then put the extension on there. And now I put the ratchet on second. Now that I got these spark plugs out, if you notice, the original spark plug does not have anything on the threads, no anti-seize or anything. So Ford did not put anything on there. So I'm not going to put anything back on there when I go back in. And there was no mention of it in the service manual. So the spark plug gap is supposed to be set at 31 thousandths, but these are preset at the factory. As a precaution, you could check them with a spark plug gapper. You need to be very careful with this. The tip of the spark plugs are very fragile and easily damaged. If you find spark plugs that are way out of gap or damaged, I recommend you not use them and send them back. Another thing you want to look for is make sure that there's no oil leaking down the tubes for the spark plugs. And if there are, you need to replace the valve cover gasket and tube seals on it. But these modern engines don't leak oil too often, and I actually have not seen one leak before, but if you do, you need to replace the gasket. Now we're going to thread the new spark plug down in the hole. Just thread it in until it bottoms out, and then you want to torque it down to 11 foot-pounds. So after doing all 3 spark plugs and torquing them all down to 11 foot-pounds, we can go ahead and feed the coils back into position. The hardest one is going to be the one in the back, but even that's not that difficult. So then after that, we can plug the electrical connector in, push the little red locking tab inwards until it locks into place, and then start the 8mm fasteners and tighten these all down. The torque spec for the coils is 5 foot-pounds. I find that the torque spec on a coil is not that critical, so you can go ahead and run them down so they're snug and maybe about a quarter turn more. Now over to the driver's side. The first one we're going to do is tackle this this pressure switch on the high pressure pump here, we need to unplug it. So the tab is on the very bottom, so you're going to press upwards and squeeze the tab and pull the connector off. Now that we're able to get to the coil and get that out, and also on the front here, the vent line here, we need to flare this little tab backwards about a 1/4 inch. And once we flare this little tab back like this, now you can pull upwards and release it. Now what you can do is you can either take it off from the bottom, or what I did was just to kind of twist it, and it'll swivel out of your way, so it'll swivel back like this. Now we got access to the coil. So just like the other side, we're going to unplug all 3 of the coils, pull the coils out, remove and replace all 3 of the spark plugs. Also, don't forget to check the gaps on there and make sure that nothing is damaged. Once you get all those swapped out, now we're going to go back in reverse. We're going to make sure that all the coils are put back in, bolted back up, and plugged back in. Plug the high pressure switch on the back here on. Put the foam pad back on. So you'll just put it over the high pressure switch here and kind of push it on until it seats on there. After that, we're going to take the vent line here and swivel it back around onto the port, and then you push it down, and you want to give it a little tug to make sure it doesn't pop back off. Now you're ready to install the top engine cover. It has this little catch in the back of the cover, and it mounts on the back of the intake back there on the little bracket. Before we do that, we need to take the oil cap back off. So you're going to take the cap back off, and then you're going to slide the engine cover onto the bracket in the back. So you angle it in there, hook it in back, and lower it down over the intake and around the port where the oil cap is. Now you can reinstall the cap. I will link up all the parts and tools that I use in this video in the description. That way, if you need any of those, you can pick those up there. I also wanted to share with you, if you wanted to support the How to Automotive YouTube channel, the best way you can do that is by purchasing t-shirts, coffee mugs, and stickers. I will leave a link for all that in the description of the video also. I'm Brian Eslick from How to Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos, encourage you to subscribe, invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again for watching.